Wendy today.
Everyone microphones on?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
We don't need that one.
Yes, sir. No Wendy today?
Yeah, I'll check, Tricia.
So these are just bigger of what I printed out on my computer. I'll be back. Yeah.
Basically pretty simple today. We're just discussing.
We need to keep
We're just,
as much as possible. We need a quorum, and you're, right now, you're a quorum.
I think it's time to
Do we have a quorum?
get off.
But I'm
We
floating-
do, we got 5, 6 of you.
I'm floating
Okay.
back and forth, so. You're a floater?
All right, are we ready to start?
Leading that charge through.
Let's call the meeting to order. The bond committee meeting of May 8th, 2017 at 9 o'clock. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item number 3, call to the public. I don't see anybody in the audience.
There are no requests to speak, and there's no one
Okay.
here.
Why is that? How come we're not having anybody here? On the microphone. You're watching it on TV? Yeah.
Okay, item number 4, approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of May 2nd, 2017?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 5, open dialogue/review of information previously presented, as well as questions. Chief Casey, do you have anything that you want to provide us? Anything
Well,
to say?
Committee, at this point, we're definitely looking at trying to come around the bend here and wrap this up as to wherever you feel comfortable with. So I really would like to turn it over to you as a committee, have your dialogue, talk about the costs. We have the costs up on the screen right now from CORE that helped provide some refinements over the weekend, as late as 6:45 last night, and the phone calls at 9 o'clock last night and 7 o'clock this morning. And so we've been working around the clock to get these numbers refined as best as we can. I want to remind everyone that these are estimates. There's some conservative estimates in here. There's the question about Station 1's HVAC is kind of a ballpark number that we feel is going to get us, in the ballpark. It could be higher than it really actually is, but we didn't have an HVAC engineer in to do the real work on the Station number 1 HVAC, as it was kind of daylighted as being an issue later in the game. Just to be clear, our HVAC issue at Station number 1 is we've added some rooms, bunk rooms, things like that do not have the proper ventilation systems in them. So, we've got vents cut out of the doors and things like that to help try to bring in air and things like that. We've got a pretty extensive HVAC system in the building that operates with different zones and things like that, with some dampers that are there that we've had trouble with.
Since day one.
Since day one, by the way, correct. But the system itself is only 6 or 7 years old, so the bones are fairly good and should last in this 10-year period. 15 to 20 years is kind of a lifespan of that type of system. So, it's more than a nice to have. Get fixed. We'd like to fix it if it makes sense to fix it. And so that's kind of where that Station 1 HVAC system is. The questions about Station number 3 HVAC is really the swamp coolers that we're looking at. They're currently located on the top of the mezzanine. We've 3 of the 4 swamp coolers are working. One of them's broke. We're expecting to have problems with another one's in the near future. It's an older system. We'd like to move that outside, as swamp coolers do a lot with water and to make the evaporation piece occur. And we've had some leaks cause some damage at Station number 3 in the past. We'd like to get those moved outside. So talking with CORE last night or this morning, we might be able, might need to add like $25,000 to the screening and the, concrete pad they'd have to put if they put that outside. I think in the scope of all this project's $25,000. I'm not going to, worry about that exact number getting added in at this point.
So you want to stay with the swamp cooler, just move them outside, stay with the current system,
Correct.
just move it outside?
And that's for the bays, correct. I don't believe there's HVAC problems in the actual station itself, as I recall. For station number 3, it's a swamp cooler issue that we really need to address at 3, and we prefer to get them outside. That would open up some storage as well on the mezzanine, which would be beneficial to us as well. So with that being said, as a summary, we could look at the numbers again if you'd like, but the large sheet that you have here, Lonnie's appreciative of, looking at those numbers, they're inclusive in the numbers on the top end of the
Square footage?
square footage piece. That top section is inclusive of that. When we start asking about, well, do we want to remodel the administrative side, you can see those costs that are being broken out below that bottom number. That $15.282 million. When you say, well, let's not do the administrative side of station number 1, then you would know that you could deduct like $931,000 from that cost.
And if we choose to pull that out, no offense to any administrative staff here, can't that be planned in our budget and spread out over a few years in phases?
We can certainly choose to go in a pay-go option, which is, Committee Member Waters has put together a great spreadsheet, which you'll see here shortly, that we can add that as a pay-go option and what that would kind of do to the bond piece. And so that's what those numbers kind of break out on the bottom, and the way you can kind of extrapolate. So you see the value or cost of those items. If you notice, Core added in the maintenance facility is also now not an add. It's actually in one of the programs up above, as we got a pretty good indication that the folks believe that the maintenance facility was a high priority from the group. But certainly, again, if you decided it wanted to be taken out, Committee Member Waters' spreadsheet will allow us to make that a pay-go option or a don't-do option, if that's what you decide. So, are there any questions on the cost estimates as they are included? The 15% soft costs as they discussed last month, last meeting, we had a little discussion about that. So that's the soft cost. That's your permitting fees, ADOT fees, connection to the water system, architectural fees, all those type of stuff. That's the estimate of what these projects typically come in at. And so they call that a soft cost. Last time we had a couple of different names for it, but that's inclusive in that bottom number. You see 13.288 is the high estimated cost for all the projects all in, and it goes to 15.282 with the 15% added. So, with that, we have the apparatus, equipment, and telecom numbers as well as presented to you a meeting or two ago. So those get added into that as for consideration. And with that, I can answer questions or talk about this. Cora's here if they have any questions about the construction.
It just came to me, the question on Station 1 reno, does that include fixing the current lift or going to a commercial elevator, just a full-on elevator?
You can come on up if you don't mind. Ileana here from CORE.
It probably would be a lift more for freight than it would be for people. If you wanted to add a commercial elevator, we would probably have to do more structural fixes as far as hoist beams and other steel and things like that that would need to be added to that.
Well, upstairs, if you continue using down here for any kind of board meetings and general assemblies for any of the public, are we required still to have an elevator upstairs? I mean, who would be up there? Just the firefighters is the plan. That's what it's been. So explain why we would have to have one.
So there is the training room upstairs. So that is a public space, the training room. And maybe you, Ilana, can speak more to the ADA, but if you recall Lance's discussion about square footages, like the administrative side doesn't meet the code. It's a mandatorily required. There's some exemptions or opportunities that you can not comply, kind of existing non-conforming type application. I believe on this side, the square footage is larger
Yeah.
and would create technically a need and could trigger a need for us to require ADA accessibility,
If we remodel something.
if we remodel and begin
If you
that
do
process.
extensive remodels, I think that threshold is 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, and you do surpass that, so.
Well, and if we're considering that because of the training, how about, has anyone talked about one of those lifts that they have that goes up the stairs, the sideway
Oh,
up,
yeah,
something
you-
like that?
Yep. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually fairly inexpensive, and so that could be an option, and I think that could fit within this number that we've given you.
Good.
But as far as a full commercial elevator, you do have the enclosure for it, but you'd have to do some upgrades to really get the structure.
And if we do that lift on the stairway to provide that service, is that okay?
That I'm not positive on, and so I would have to defer to an engineer or somebody that knows the code better than I do.
So-
But the only thing that you'd need to be aware of is enough room to still have the correct width for people to walk up the stairs. That's what you need
Is
to
it too narrow?
consider.
So I'm not sure about the ADA requirements. I mean, the architects looked at some of that. The concern would be that if you had someone with a wheelchair, motorized wheelchair, that it's at the bottom of the stairs that needed to get to the top, we can't lift that, 400 or 500 pound wheelchair up the stairs ourselves or something like that. So there is a concern for using just that type of lift. The question would be, could we create the elevator that we have or the lift that we have now, which it's considerable problems since as ever. Could that just be retrofitted into a more reliable lift using the same space and everything with just a
Right,
better
that's what our costs have.
a better piece of apparatus that would function in there more efficiently?
And how about the accommodation of, on the nights that you have to, if to just have the training downstairs, aren't we allowed, can't we do that?
Again, ADA doesn't, we have to put ADA bathrooms in our fire stations, even though we would likely not have a ADA firefighter type situation. We're still required to do that, even though it's not necessarily as practical, or that anyone with an ADA would be showering in our
Right.
facility, as it's not a public showering facility.
We have an example of the chairlift with the same problem with, I don't know if you were on, Superstition Fire and Medical District is now the district's name. But it was Apache Junction at the time, and this station, I think, is about 6 years old, and it's in Gold Canyon, Arizona, so it's in the Apache Junction area. And it's a smaller station, and it was in it was a new build, so it's a new station, so for a fire district. And they didn't want to spend the money on this elevator that costs so much, and there's, a lot of times there's issues. And also, this station in particular only had the living quarters upstairs, so everything else was downstairs. And even still with ADA, we couldn't get around it. The best option we found was the chairlift. That chairlift sits at the bottom of the stairs and is never used, but it was a big cost savings. So even if there's nothing upstairs, it doesn't make any sense to me either, but it has been done. If you want, we have photos of what that kind of looks like, how big it is. We can certainly give you guys info as you move forward to talk about options.
So
And
that did suffice, the chairlift?
it did,
Okay.
yep, it did, it passed everything, and it's a fairly new station, I would say maybe 5.
And in that case, I would tell you that there's a completely different purpose for that building if the only living quarters are upstairs versus our facility.
Right.
So that fix, which maybe met the ADA requirement in that application, I don't believe would apply here for the use that we have here.
And do you have to have an inspector, someone come and say yay or nay? How do we find that out?
Well, it's through the city,
the
through the
city.
code, and through the permitting process, and all that stuff is where you try to meet your ADA requirement. But I think Department of Justice, I think, is who regulates that, if I'm not mistaken. And so if someone calls and complains, then we deal with the Department of Justice and any sort of fines and retrofitting and everything else that go with it. So we really don't want to play that game. So much as even in fire stations where we put the ADA required shower apparatus, which will never get used. It's not even that we would put it in just to get the permit and then take it out because we don't need it. It just stays there because it can only cost you money and get you in trouble. So it's,
We don't want to get in trouble. I was just
Yeah.
trying to save money.
yeah, certainly, and being practical. And that's why I think a commercial elevator application isn't the practical option, both in space and in cost. However, taking the existing lift creating a better equipment that's going to be reliable. So whatever our issues are with this elevator or lift, which is accessible for handicap, meets the requirements, would, single person type setup is acceptable and meets the intent, the spirit, and everything of ADA.
What's the breakout for the elevator? Where I don't.
The lift would actually, if I remember correctly, to replace that with a very similar system, better equipment, it would be about $30,000. Whereas an elevator, a two-stop elevator, would probably be more like 50, 60. That helps. And that's just the elevator. That would not do the steel. That would not include the steel and the enclosure additions that you'd have to do. But I know they can get expensive.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
I'll move on from this, but I've also recently investigated those chair lifts for stairs for my pool, and it might be worth investigating for a reasonable price to put on the exterior stairs here, and then maybe even over admin, because it might be a way to look into, to, like Karen says, to save some money on those, because those are now ADA compliant. I believe you can get those. There's a big lift where the mechanical
Yeah.
chairs will fit on them, and they will lift them up and carry them up to the stairs, and instead of putting in, not to disagree, but about $100,000 elevator after all said and done. I'm going through that myself.
So, so to be clear, these numbers include a $30,000 lift fixed versus a $100,000 elevator piece. So if we wanted to go that route, we're not suggesting we go that route. And certainly when we get down the road and begin to look at construction options, if a lift makes sense, we're all for that. That makes sense. They make quite a few lifts now in places that, are kind of tucked away under the stairs, and mechanically they come out and, do their thing when they need to and get stowed back and out of the way, that type of stuff. And so we can certainly look into those
They have
options.
that over at the high school, and I remember because Matt had to use it, and he was the first one, and they had it in place for 4 or 5 years, and nobody had used it. So when then they needed it, they needed to fix it. So it is something that needs to be regularly maintained.
Correct.
But it'd be nice to have different options.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leona.
No problem.
Any other questions about the building or costs that are associated with it? All right. Mr. Chairman, would you'd like me to go over the kind of the budget, bond, no bond, the different costs of bonds that we provide you copies of over the weekend?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that homework, by the way.
I wish I could take credit for the homework side of that. I can't take credit. We'll give it to Gabe because Gabe did it. So, board, looking up on the screen here, you'll see. Let me try to pull it up here a little more bigger. It's too big. Let's try one more. Okay. Committee, when you look at this up here, this is if we do no bond at all. So if we do no bond at all, we've all agreed that there's needs the fire district needs to take into consideration. And without having 27 different scenarios of, well, with this or without this, with an elevator, with a lift, without whatever, I mean, your head will spin. So to keep an apple to an apple, this is pretty much agreeing that we're bonding the items that we've talked about. And you see at the bottom here
That we're spending.
that we're spending. So I say,
You said bond.
I am sorry. We're talking about bonding. That was not a Freudian slip. There's 2.5 million at this bottom line annually. So that's a 9-year. That should be 10 years, right? That's 9. So 9 times 2.5 is about 2.25 million, $22.5 million worth of expenses that we're projecting in this 10-year span. Add in the 1.45 million, you're about $24 million in expenses. So the question is, how do we spend that money? How do we account for it? Do we do it with no bond? And so what's interesting, we look at this, we say, well, if we do no bond and we have to buy this stuff and do these things, pay for them, we're amortizing it all over 10 years, basically. You see the mill rate, what the mill rate does and where it goes. And you notice in the last 2 columns, the mill rate goes to 328 and 335, both of which are over the allowable maximum as it's currently sitting at. I won't forecast that I think it'll be changed by then, but I think it will be changed by then from 325 to something higher, but it doesn't matter in today's discussion. So the point of that is we really have to back in to that 325 cap probably in fiscal year 23-24, maybe even to 22-23. So the impact to the taxpayer in these years, if we talk about somewhere in here having to be at 325, your taxes are going to go up exponentially in these years, and then it's going to be tapped out and go up just based upon the assessed value in all of these years. So the spike in your taxes, the citizens' taxes, will be great, and then they'll plateau, but at a considerably higher rate in this model. It's fairly understandable, right? The relationship between, hey, we got to pay for this in 10 years.
Yep.
How are we going to make all that happen? It's going to cost us more each year, and et cetera, et cetera. So we looked at that one, and then we said, what if we just did a $15 million bond? And I say just, like it's a small number, but let's say we did a $15 million bond. So, number one, we don't get to the 325 cap, and this is that 3% growth, kind of 2.5% growth in here. So there's some conservancy in here. It's still not a bad year, but it's being reasonable, if you will. You'll see what that does. Still requires us to do 1.3. We were at 2.5 million. Now we're at 1.3 million of capital budget each year to help amortize the difference between the $24 million worth of expenses, roughly, and we also need to have the capital fund to be able to be continuing as well. So with that, that's a $15 million bond. What's interesting here is you're going to watch the next two slides, a $17 and an $18 million bond. You're going to see what it does to the mill rate, and it's really, if you look in here, so 263, 272, 282, 290. You can just kind of watch that. Let me go back one real quick and see how fast that climbs. So at 258 next year, if you look at this, they went to 279 next year if we didn't bond. So we'd go from 253 to 279 versus 253 to 258. Considerable softening of, now granted there's a bond payment in there too, so don't forget that. You got a 17-cent bond payment, but even the 17-cent bond payment is less than 258 and 17 is less than the 279, just by a couple pennies, but it's less than.
Well, that initial 2018, 2019 hit without a bond, that percentage is huge.
Huge.
And that's going to really hurt a lot of people. That's why I'm in favor of spreading it out.
Absolutely. And you'll see now if we go to the $17 million bond, we only go up a penny in the mill rate is what we're projecting again. There's no guarantees of this will be exactly where, but this is what the projections are. We only go up a penny and we go to 19 cents. So considerably different. 260, 269, 278. And when I go back to 258, 263, 272, so you can see the difference there. And again, the bond, there's a couple more pennies in the bond, a penny, I guess, in the bond difference from 16.5, 16.1, 18.7, 18.8, so it's almost 2 cents there. When I go to $18 million, you're at 314 mill rate at the end, and you're looking at the slower progression, 253, 253. Now look at that, the actual bond, the actual mill rate actually doesn't really even move. Goes up by, not even a penny, a tenth of a cent to 259, and it just really smoothens out pretty nicely in that 18 million. This is just ironic. We're still, putting away $1.05 million a year in the capital budget to do the offset. And in the $20 million projection, we end up at the same 314. You actually see the mill rate go down in the $20 million bond. Of course, the bond rate goes up to 22, almost 23 cents in that scenario. So the question really becomes, how does the bond look in the eyes of the beholder, right? I mean, what's the value of that? Hit the wrong button, sorry. So when we look at this question here, how does the bond impact? So let's be clear. Well, it saves you money in the first 10 years of the bond. the relationship, you save money in the first 10 years, but because you're having a 20-year payment, it does get more expensive. You're paying for it over years. So in the first 4 scenarios I showed you, that is the next 10 years, our residents paying for these improvements for 10 years, and it's kind of paid. We'll still have an ongoing capital need, but that's really putting the burden, and in some cases, a very quick burden on people today for something that's going to have a 30 or 40-year lifespan for the large percentage of this bond discussion. But if you say, hey, over the next 20 years, you're going to pay for this, you do pay more. So in the average homeowner being a $345,000 assessed value home, in each of those scenarios, it costs you between $920 more and $1,200 more. So at the $1,000 mark, at the $17 million mark, that's $50 a year, not even $51, something
So
like
this
that.
is
Here.
only 10-year, not the 20-year spread?
No, this is the difference between the bond compared to the 10-year spread.
Gotcha.
That's the difference there. So it costs you less in the first 10 years. It will cost you more the second 10 years. But if you amortize out that difference, you're talking about $50 a year for 20 years. Over that 20 years. Do you think it's worth that little bit of juice, if you will, over 20 years, $50 a year, to spread the cost out to residents, property owners, commercial business owners, vacant landowners for 20 years, or do we want to put it on the burden of folks over those first 10 years? That's the question that this really kind of shows. And I think there's one more page here. And so this is really kind of where the rubber meets the road in my mind. When you look at this bond here, look at this comparison of bond versus pay. If you look at the top, if we do no bond, that average taxpayer pays, and what we don't have, I just realized that just now, is we don't show what's in there this first year, in upcoming year. So I apologize for that. Somebody with a quick calculator could probably tell me what that number is. In comparison, how much of the jump is. But if we don't do a bond, it's going to be $964, $1,020, $1,077, and go all the way through, right? And you can see the increase there with no bond. If you add a bond at $15 million, here's your payment with a bond. It's less than, it's less than, it's less than, and the last one is $1,452, less than. So it's actually, when you talk about the bond costing more money, it's an added tax, if you will. It is an added multiplier. At the end of the day, this taxpayer with no bond is going to be having a new fire station, doing everything more, paying more than this person here, any one of these 3 scenarios, is going to be paying. Again, it continues out, but it will get us back on track and create an opportunity for us to be able to say, we got the infrastructure built, taken care of. How do we now prevent this from happening again? So with that, I think that's really the comparisons that we look at and how it will impact the taxpayer. And likewise, if you look at the first column, that first year, 964, all the numbers below here are all less than. So the tricky part is to say, well, geez, how does that work? The other option is don't do any capital. If we don't know capital, then the scenario looks completely different, right? But at some point, we're going to have to do capital. It's not a matter of should we or shouldn't we. We've all agreed, I think, in the committee that we have to. So now, today, we have a letter that's kind of been drafted by Mr. Waters. You guys have, I believe, seen that. You guys can talk about what those numbers look like. I have a beautiful spreadsheet that Mr. Waters put together where we can add and deduct some different options on a priority. And I will go from there. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you have any other questions about the number presentation side of this.
Any questions of the chief? Lonnie?
So, Chief, great presentation. It's exactly, I think, what we were asking for put it into Dave and I's language and readability. My question is, in my mind, is this is based on a 10-year budget here that you presented to us.
Correct.
As of today. and as of this current board.
Correct.
So if we go into this and agree based on this 10-year budget that you've projected out, including operating wages, capital, everything's included on that, it's based on our projections today. Where I'm going is next year's board or the next turnover on the board could change everything here. The wages could go up. I mean, so we're just basing this on this projected, what you're projecting today, not on what any future boards, and there's no way that we can stipulate anything in our recommendations to that fact.
No, I think Mr. Waters will talk to that.
Yeah, I think, and I can't remember the exact paragraph, but in our recommendation, I put a statement or a sentence or two that basically highly recommends that number one, if we go to bond election and it passes, that future boards honor the public's desires there. But no, I don't think we have any way to control, because even if we vote for a $15 million or a $20 million bond, the next board down the road could say, I don't care that we've got this available to us, we're not going to sell any more bonds.
And I think we should read that, and I'll read it for you. I believe it's number 2, that the elected fire board directs staff to continue to find efficiencies and cost savings so as to require the minimum amount of bond sales to complete the capital projects as proposed. And I believe that's how we all feel, and I want to make sure that the community out there hears that.
So
Thank you, Karen. I agree, and like I stated last meeting, Mr. Waters did a phenomenal job on this, and stating in verbiage as, I guess, strongly as we can as a committee to that fact of future boards to bring it to Lonnie's turn and listen to us and what we recommended.
So committee, I want to be clear on number 2's bullet point, that we'll look for efficiencies and create opportunities and bond as little as possible, if you will. The fact is, though, unless someone donated a large sum of cash to the fire district, the only way we get revenue is by increasing the mill rate or by an increase in the AV. So if you saw this ginormous increase in the AV and we kept the mill rate the same, whatever, you'll get an increase in funding, right? But that funding is still a tax to the resident, and that would still create a pay now immediate impact to the resident commercial owner. So it's kind of a little bit like if we're going to go into the pool of bond and the concept of spreading the love for a 20-year experience, you're kind of in the pool. Right. Or we tax the folks now and we pay for it now, and those people paid for it today, and no one else pays for it after. So it's kind of, you kind of don't have both, short of if there's a tolerance that, hey, this makes a ton of sense and there's a reason why. Hey, interest rates, they're paying you 10% to borrow money right now. We should probably borrow money and make the 10%, right? I don't think that's going to happen, but stranger things do. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. Like staff is completely on board. We want to be as responsible as possible, and a lot of that would be in the programming of the building and the fixtures and the things that we end up doing with finishes and things like that to be responsible, to create the most logical output of the building, meaning the floor ground concrete, that we don't have to replace carpet every so many years, and massing on the walls that we don't have to paint, and wallpaper that maybe is going to peel, or special little wooden slats, and all these little things that maybe need to be dusted every week or whatever. So creating efficiencies that way, that's where we can really do some good for the community as well.
And I think this calls into mind the fact that you pulled some of the apparatus out and that we are going to purchase it through your regular budget. And I think that's more what we're talking about in this statement.
Correct.
Thank you, Ms. Max. Well, actually, that was where I'm going. So can we, again, as the committee, state strongly that if we go out and we approve this bond to move forward to the board and the board puts it out to the public vote, that this is our idea of what should be in that bond, and that's what we're going to do. But can future boards can we hold the future board to that? So if a future board says, oh, we're going to go buy a bunch of new Suburbans just because, yeah, we have this bond money, is that up for the public to come up and cry foul, or?
So the beauty of the democratic process is you get to come here to the meeting and speak your piece. You've got 3 minutes to do it. We're happy to hear from you. That does not preclude future boards from spending or not spending that money. Now, again, bonding for a couple of Suburbans doesn't make any sense to me at all because of the price of the Suburbans and the lasting ability of that Suburban. However, if one of them comes in and says, hey, we don't want to remodel station number 1, that was a really bad idea, and we're not going to do it, and everyone else thinks it is, except for those, all you need is 3 board members at that point to make that decision through the public pressure to say, listen, we had a vote that this was all needed. We had a committee that sat here for multiple meetings and dozens and dozens of hours, and you're going against the will of the people that elect you. There's a check and a balance in that democratic process, and
So-
that's the beauty of it.
So my philosophical questions that everybody's aware of the last couple meetings on what I feel should be bondable or in a bond or not, this is going to be my philosophical opinion on this committee. Future peoples will have their own idea of what that money could be spent on.
Correct. And so that's why we've included that hybrid model that Karen spoke of, that, hey, some of the large capital, a couple fire engines, a couple water tenders are what we've put in there as far as the fleet piece. And then we're looking at the telecom as a package and saying, hey, here's the telecom package of all the stuff we need. And we have a hybrid, of that as well, that we're not even meeting all of the telecom needs in that number as well. And so we're doing that hybrid to kind of balance that a little bit. So you do have a little bit of pay go and a little bit of we're getting this benefit today and whatever. Because there's certainly the option is, hey, put it all in a bond and don't pay any of it over anything less than 20 years or whatever. And again, remember, if we do purchase, something that has a less of a lifespan, like an engine, even though it has a 15-year lifespan, those bonds will be paid off in like 7 years for those type of items, the way it will be structured. So those items will get paid off in the front end of the bond, and the longer lasting things will get paid off at the back end of the bond. So, Mr. Chair?
Just a clarification on item number 2. Is it also my understanding that when we refer to efficiencies and cost savings, we're not just talking about the specifics of the capital projects, but we would also be talking about wages and benefits and the projected operating budget over the 10 years?
Correct. I think the fire district has a great responsibility to be doing that regardless of what happens. That's what I've tried to work on for the last 5 years that I've been here. I'll continue to work on that. That's a high priority. We have a very blessed opportunity to serve the public and maintaining our efficiencies in everything that we do, from salaries to operations to two-ply toilet paper. I mean, if there's a way, we got guys that are going down to we're saving 18 cents on a carton of this or that, and they've worked hard to make sure we're getting the best value on our supplies, and the cleaning supplies down to our medical supplies, and looking at co-ops, and we're buying things. So, writing grants, one of the other bullets in here is writing grants and looking for alternate funding source. That's going to continue to happen. And where we can find those opportunities, we're going to continue to find those. The agency here, the district, will not just go, wow, we got that bond, now we're good to go, let's go spend everything we got. We'll still have that mindset, at least as long as I'm here, that will maintain itself. I can guarantee you that.
I believe that's a mandate that's come from the community for 20 years, if not longer. And I appreciate you guys working so hard to complete that.
Look, Ms. Maxwell, you're absolutely right. I'm sure it has been going on for much longer than I can speak to with confidence, because I just wasn't here. But we certainly work to be as transparent as possible. I think government has become way more transparent in the last 10 years than it was the 10 years before that, and probably the 10 years before that. So we will continue with an extreme amount of transparency. The minutes that Tricia takes, the minutes are posted, the videos that we do. I mean, everything is open to the public. And all you have to do is come and show up. You have to call and ask questions. I mean, that's how you get information. It's not from your neighbor that thought he heard someone who had a friend on the fire department one time who said this. That's just not, it's not acceptable. It's alternate facts at its finest. And there's enough people that seem to sometimes believe those facts that make, get themselves in trouble, because now when we can say, well, just go to this board meeting and watch this. And they say, well, that's not what happened. I guess I better talk to my neighbor. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Or call and ask. I mean, I'm going to give you the truth, whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not. And we're not perfect, but we work really hard. And we're entrusted for the really, really important job in this community. And considering this bond allows us the opportunity to continue to provide those services in a sustainable manner. And reading the paper from Friday, everything's costing more. I was looking at, the city and their roads, and I'm on a committee that's looking at that. And they're like, wow, we have this road system that really needs some work. It's going to cost a lot of money. Is anyone shocked by that? The film festival is looking at it going, wow, we need to do a campaign right now because things are costing more money than we expected, and to keep sustainable, we're just not able to do what we're doing. So everything just costs money, and I would love to do this all for free. I bet Core would love to do it for free. They're busy texting, but they nodded their head. They love to. But the fact is, they got to pay their rent. They got to pay their employees. We have to pay our employees. We have to. So it doesn't work.
Public safety is our business, and despite the fact that things are going up, it has to be done, and we have to supply that service to all of our community and the millions of people that come here. It would not go over well if we could have performed a service well and we chose to do it substandardly.
And I want to say something on that, Ms. Maxwell, as well. So I've heard some folks that are concerned. Well, how are the non-residents, how are these visitors going to pay for this service that we're going to provide? They don't directly. There is no direct way. So the sales tax they pay, but we don't get any of the sales tax. The city does. The bed tax goes to the city. I mean, we as a fire district do not get any benefit from the visitor. But what we do get is that when they are paying the bed taxes, when they are paying the sales taxes, then they're spending money in that business. And that business that pays commercial taxes, there's some very large taxes that commercial properties pay. It's again based on value of the property. So we do get paid by the visitors, because if they don't pay the bed, to sleep in there or to buy that food or do whatever they're doing, those businesses don't exist. That value doesn't exist in that property. It's a domino effect. And so while we don't get we can't just go, hey, you're a visitor. Hey, give me $10 now because you're in our town and we're here to protect you in case you need it. That'd be cool. I'd love that. But I also don't want to pay that every time I go. I was in Chicago this weekend. I was a visitor in Chicago, and if I needed emergency services, they would have provided them for me and not just went, hey, are you one of those, how many million visitors go to Chicago? I can't believe you're using our services and not paying for it. I enjoyed the city. I had a lot of fun. We spent a lot of money in a lot of different places, and that's how they got my share of giving emergency services if I needed it. And I didn't. So there was no harm, no foul to them. But they had to be ready for me in case I did. So that's the balance of that. And I continue to hear folks wonder, why do these visitors not have to pay for stuff? It's just not a mechanism for us to do it. If there was, let me know.
No, but I like your explanation, and I appreciate that, because everything goes up in price, and the commercial businesses are collecting more because their services cost more and the taxes cost more. So everyone's paying their fair share, is what it sounds like.
So if I want to just take you back to remember the assessor folks that talked to us before, commercial paid 25%, and now they pay 18%. So in the last 10 years or so, commercial has seen a dramatic decrease in the amount that they pay in taxes. So they're seeing a decrease through legislative actions that they've taken. The 10% that the homeowner pays has been the same, and I forget what the percentage of. Is it 15% for vacant land? I can't remember what the vacant land is, but I think it's more than residential. That's been the same, so those didn't change. So commercial's seen a reduction in taxes actually, which remember moved the burden to the residential side of it dramatically. But a whole other presentation I want to take us back through.
Dave, did you? Gene?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank the staff and the chief for all the material that they gave us to analyze. I'll keep this in my personal file at home forever. And for Mr. Waters, what an incredible draft report. And the revision I went through word by word, and I certainly appreciated it. what I'd like to do is I'd like to propose a motion, Mr. Chairman. And of course, the motion's up for discussion that we'll have, and that is to accept the draft report of that written by Mr. Waters and the revised draft report. And in addition to that, as part of that motion, a $20 million bond to accept that. And so that's my motion.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Right now, discussion though.
Okay. Yeah, I think we need to have some discussion on it first, and I know that Gary Johnson couldn't be here today, and he did provide some comments that I think he would like to have shared with the group at the appropriate time.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll let you do this. Dave Waters has got something to say, and we have a worksheet we can do to talk about some of the numbers to get to where we want to be with the 20 million or not, or whatever. But
Mr. Chairman, and Gene, thank you very much for the kind words. I really feel like we need to, before this recommendation gets finished, the numbers in here are not 100% correct yet because we don't know what it is we're for sure recommending. With this worksheet on the TV here, I'm hoping we can get there and then we can adjust the numbers in our recommendation. And then we can go through some of the wordsmithing or other concerns that maybe the committee might have. But I think we're a little premature on accepting the draft as written.
So that motion would have failed for a lack of a second at this time? Is that correct?
That's correct.
okay. Well, on that note, then I guess, Mr. Chair, I'll tell if you want. I mean, if you want to do it, you want?
go ahead.
You sure? I'm happy to give you the. I give you the.
We don't
Go.
have that?
No, Dave just put this together today, so I will let Dave explain this and let him walk through it, and take the option to.
Okay, so as Chris said, I just got up early this morning and pulled this thing together. And what it shows is all of our projects, and they're kind of broke out, modularized, if you will, to combine with the totals that CORE came up with. And then if the board, the committee, or the board in the future decides that it doesn't want to do something, then we've pulled some things out. For example, Station 1 West Side, Station 1 Admin side. That includes doing everything, the sum of those two numbers. If the committee said, we don't want to do the admin side, but we still think it's important to do the high vac on the admin side, then we'll add that number in there. And same with Station 3. This, we may not want to do the living quarters side, and we didn't know at the time, but we do want to do this stuff, or we don't want to do. Let's say we don't want to do either one of those, but we definitely want to do the apron and drainage on Station 3. Then we just have, so we can start going through here. My hope was that we can go line item by line item. We've got 10 people. Unfortunately, we don't have necessarily the committee to vote, and I don't know where some of the other committee members would be on this. But my hope was to come down here and just say, start voting, literally. Is rebuilding Station 4, yes, no? I don't care how we pay for it right this second. I want to know, is it something we should do? And if we vote and we say, yes, it is, then go on down and we can just kind of put our vote count in here. But again, we don't have a full committee member. Then we can come back and say, Station 4, do we bond it or do we pay-go it? If it's a yes, do we bond it or do we pay-go it? And by doing that, for example, let's down here then, it'll start summing up. It'll automatically start summing up these numbers, what's going to be bond funded, what's going to be pay-go'd, and what our total capital expenditures over that time period is. for that upper section, anything that we choose to do in this major capital sections, project section, if we choose to do it, it'll automatically add 15% for those soft owner costs, because those are major enough projects that there will be those soft owner costs. Down here, I assume you'd probably get, a couple of bids and pick one and go for it. You wouldn't have the soft. Same with apparatus. The fire district would go out RFP or whatever it is they do nowadays and do that. So, does this make sense? Do you want it? Does it feel like we can go ahead and take a sample vote just based on what's here, or do you just want to look at some numbers and assume what the committee is going to do?
Did Gary, you said Gary left you some information?
Well, he left me some comments on some of the information in the draft report.
And does any of it have, do you apply
Well,
to
he
that?
doesn't really get into numbers in his comments. It's more, the purpose of the bond, and I can go through them if you'd like. If you want to do that first, or we can do it after we do this.
Let's do this. Let's do this. The committee members here, is Station 4 rebuild a yes or a no?
Yes.
No no's. Okay.
Can you work this? Is this spreadsheet? Can you work that as we go?
Yep, I'm going to do it. So, what are we, 5? About Station 5 rebuild.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. West Side remodel. Or, well, I'll ask it, how about all of Station 1? Is everybody up for that?
No. Nay.
Okay. Then how about just the west side?
To be clear, that's the firefighter.
That's
firefighter
this side.
And the HVAC is for both sides?
Yeah, the HVAC that's in there is, again, it's a number that we're looking at, that would be the system itself, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, we can break it out but if you're gonna replace the HVAC and do the work in the HVAC, we can deduct those if you say, don't do the HVAC. We can do the deduct on that by taking that out.
Changing that
Change
out,
it to
but
a negative, but,
And
right.
it's gonna be separate units, separate systems, right?
well, they're all separate. I don't know how many rooftop units they're all are, but
Ah.
there's multiple rooftop units that all report into a
Right.
control module thing that determines when one's on, one's off, and makeup air and all that stuff. So,
I've been freezing in this place forever.
so
is everybody yes that they want to do the entire west side, or are they just feeling like they just want to do the HVAC on the west side and not do?
My vote's entire west side.
Okay. So
as
entire
well.
west side 3,
So we're talking the west side, this side,
this side,
Correct.
correct.
With
Remodeling with HVAC,
for
correct.
the whole building.
No, HVAC on this side, Lonnie. On this side of the station only. So the entire west side would get fixed for 1.7.
I thought we just clarified.
but you can add. We can do either way. You can. There's on the bottom line is Mr. Waters is showing. We have it broken as what $230,000 is an estimate to repair. So you can either either do the motion with one side and then talk about the other side, or if air conditioning and heating is equally important across the building versus the response side,
Yeah.
you can include both. But if someone's opposed to doing on both sides, then let us know. We'll deduct one side.
Okay.
Right now, it would require us if you do it.
The HVAC should be on the entire building, I would
So,
think.
so
Okay.
line 13, does that include both or not in your model?
So line 13 does not include both. We would add,
The 150?
but we can do that. We can, because I can come down here, down in this line right here, and add. We can put this into the 115 into that 1.7 to do the HVAC on the entire building. Oh, it does. So the 1.7 includes both HVAC on both sides? Oh, awesome. Okay, that's awesome.
It's all set.
Okay, so 3 yeses, 4 yeses. Lonnie, where are you at?
I'm on the fence. We're just whether we would like to see this in the bond or
Now, we're whether or
Just
not we want to do it right
whether
now.
we want to do it.
Do it.
Okay.
Whether you bond it or pay go
Pay
it.
or what? Okay, if we're looking to see whether this needs to, some touch-ups and some little remodels, yes, I agree.
Okay, so everybody's there. The maintenance facility.
You're on admin side here,
I'm
Mr.
sorry, the
Warda.
admin. Anybody want to do the admin?
And the admin, so that 931 is a complete remodel,
Chris's big desk, the,
all that good stuff.
that's right.
I'm
Yeah,
shorting up
complete-
my office. You're
So the
killing me,
complete
Smalls.
remodel that we saw, that's
So-
what it's
so
including.
the one challenge I want to point out to this, so in this, you're about to talk about the maintenance facility and the admin. It's gonna be difficult to not do both. Meaning, if we do the maintenance facility, that means we build a new garage, new storage. The existing garage will remain here, and if we don't do any remodel, it's just another, it doesn't net us anything on the other side. So, I mean, which you net a new maintenance facility and the advantages of that. But then we have really like two maintenance facilities. I just want to be clear on that. So, just for what that's worth, I'll leave it at that. I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just pointing out that. Does that make sense what I just said?
Well, again, and the yes vote just means that we think it should be done at some point using some funding mechanism.
Correct.
Not necessarily the bonds.
Correct.
Because I get,
Okay.
But we'll go back to how we pay for it in a minute.
Thank you, Chairman. That clarifies that. So, yeah, so does admin side need work? Yes, there's holes in the walls and critters coming in, so yes.
And what would happen to the maintenance facility, the garage that's there now? Is that going to be absorbed as part of the administration offices and stuff? Or, because there'll be a separate maintenance facility built to,
It would get turned into some kind of working or living space,
So-
office space.
Yeah, so that would end up being, a CRM we'd end up building a hallway, if you remember those kind of schematic drawings, at least conceptually, when we get to it, what it really looks like, but there'd be a hallway put in that would take you down into CRM, would operate in one of those bays, basically. One bay would remain a reserve apparatus bay.
is
and
it
then-
possible to bring the training down there and again, get us out of the elevator lift over here and move something like that over in that space for you guys to consider that?
There's probably options to consider. I'm not sure. We'd have to then move administration up here. We'd still have a non-ADA requirement. I think we'd have a much better likelihood of having an ADA requirement in a potential administration position. We've already had a few terms where people have been temporarily hurt and unable to do stairs and things like that and not been able to operate in the administrative side.
Okay, thank you.
So, but to answer your question, none of this is set in stone. When we began to look at Station 1 specifically, we started saying, what about this, what about that? And what we realized is that the footprint is large enough to give us many options. But to take the training room that's up there and move it, I think would be pretty costly return for the money. It'd probably be more money than it would be to put the real elevator in,
Okay.
I would guess.
All right, thank you.
But great question, though.
Okay, back to Station 1 admin side, and I guess, based on Chris's comment, the maintenance facility.
I'm just pointing out that if you do the maintenance facility, if you don't do the admin, you have this, you still have another admin or a maintenance facility that's there. I'm not advocating that you have to do them together. I'm just
Okay, well,
pointing out.
that changes my thought process a little bit but anyway,
I'll
yes,
still
no,
get a small desk.
I say yes. To both.
to both.
Yes to both.
So we've got
Yeah, I mean,
three.
I think we agree on the maintenance facilities, the history that we have here. I think we do need one, and if we can't have one without the other, then,
Okay.
say yes on both.
And Dave, you've.
Do we want to revise our votes up on the upper
Oh,
three?
I don't know,
Go
do
back
we?
up.
Are you?
I think I need to vote on those.
Okay, is that
On
a yes?
Station 4, yes.
Chris, how do I get rid of that?
Escape button.
What did I do?
So just, yes, right over top of it.
Station 5, yes.
Oops.
Station 1, West Side HVAC, yes.
And that's HVAC for everybody.
Both sides. Okay. Yeah, I can tell you on HVAC, yes.
Okay, so we're up to date. Station 3, the structural high vac and apron stuff.
This is QA also, question and answer also on this. So, if correct, Mr. Waters, I can ask questions on that? Absolutely. The apron is priority out there. I guess we were out there long enough ago that and maybe we didn't touch on it hard enough, Chief, that the apron out there is a higher priority, that the bays actually flood, or does it flood into the weight room there? Where's the quote unquote flooding?
I don't have that answer specifically. I don't know that we flood but the low point is that back, outside.
That back patio
back
area?
patio area is the lowest spot, so we probably need to do some sort of French drain in there, to collect it so we don't flood. And we have water that can seep in a little bit, that, out in front, the drainage at the, we call it Lake Sedona, but, the front that drains across the parking lot down towards Weber's. We've done some improvements recently on that, but making sure that that is up to speed and doing right. I believe that the parking lot as it sits where the gas tanks fuel station is, that's a low point there where it all falls back into and holds till it evaporates and goes and doesn't drain properly there. So that's my understanding of the Station 3 drainage issue, and I don't know if there's anything else that Ileana's got to add to that.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is from the assessment report that LEA did was that the exercise room does leak. So that's another point in the building where there is some leaking concerns.
Leak from the roof or leak from the ground?
I'm not sure exactly where it's coming from. I just know that the report said that there's
I-
water intrusion.
I believe the leak was from the patio up above. We talked about maybe enclosing that patio or whatever. There was a
The
leak
patio up on
above.
top,
Yeah,
correct,
there's a
okay.
leak issue.
That has nothing to do with the apron
Not the-
aspect.
Not the apron specifically, no.
Okay, so if I vote yay on this, this is stuff that could possibly be pulled out, and the prioritization at that point gets, so this is just a general overview. Yeah, something needs to be done.
Well,
And
yeah,
then we
as you can
prioritize.
see, Lonnie, this is not the living quarters for Station
That,
3. This
I
is
got
just-
questions on that next.
The
but
intent
so-
of those two breakouts is the critical stuff on the station, the structural high vac apron, and then all the living type quarters has a
The structural
separate-
is the roof. That-
Correct, the roof.
Okay, all right. I get that, and then we can get into the nuts and bolts later. So as an overview, yeah, I understand.
Any other questions?
Again, I get, just to clarify, that if we say yes, we're saying this is work that needs to be done. We're not saying how it should be paid.
That's correct.
But by you,
Right now, we're gonna do that in a few minutes.
but by you grouping those three together, Dave, I don't see how I could vote to bond on that line. There would be a pay-as-you-go portion in my head, and I don't see that you broke it out unless it's further down in the bottom.
It is broken out on the bottom there if but I mean, not structural. Structural, you know, I the way I did it, again, I did this morning, was what did I believe were the critical things for Station 3, fixing the roof, fixing the high vac, which apparently is just the evaporative coolers and that kind of a thing, and fixing the apron drainage issues. That I'm not even sure exactly what that means. I just remember in the LEA report it was highlighted that those are issues. There may be a few other priorities in there that are in that number that are quote unquote critical. And you're right, they may be more of a pay go. I don't know. But we're not at pay go or bond right now.
This is
does
just,
it need to
is
be
it
done?
critical, does it need to be done?
Correct.
And if you remember the apron piece, there's parts of the driveway where they make the radius that are all asphalt, and because of the grade difference and because of the asphalt, when we're making those turns, we chew up that parking lot pretty good, and so the request is to put concrete in there like it should have been done, so that turning radius and the wear and tear when they spill fuel in the vehicles and things like that, it doesn't wreck the parking lot like it's currently doing, and so that's a long-term cost efficiency. And so I guess the question to I think Lonnie is that if you said, hey, I like the concept of the structural piece, but I don't like HVAC HVAC and apron, then we can talk about item number 22 on that list, this apron and drainage at 295, and we can take that out and make that a pay-go option, right? If, you know, if you wanted to,
Good,
for some
okay.
reason, you're really opposed to that $300,000 being done in a bonded.
So
Yeah.
16, if it needs to be looked at and considered, that is a yay vote. Then to get into the specifics is down underneath whether we pull it out or not, that's specific. Okay, good. Thank
I
you.
would agree with that too.
Everybody here agreed that line 16 is a yes, we need to do it?
Yes.
Okay. How about line 17? I'm a no.
Yes.
I'm a no.
I'm a yes.
So I'm a
Chair.
no with a question. So remind me on 3, the living quarters of what you're asking for there.
So that living quarter remodel is actually creating efficiencies from the, and to be clear, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just, this is all what the report kind of showed as options for us. Creating a hallway that dumps into the bays with a landing and goes directly in the bays from the living quarters. Is there any other efficiencies on the first floor that are created?
So they can come all the way from the back of that long hallway and come straight down instead of coming all the way from the back and around and through the living quarters and down the stairs, and it
Yeah.
saves, it's a time saver.
It's a
and-
time saver.
And safety for them, you know, I
There's some
believe.
safety for them too. Is there other options? in
The
there?
other thing I do believe it mentioned was the restrooms on the first level being ADA compliant. Is that correct?
I think so.
If my memory holds true, that was one of the biggest issues that I saw on the first level of that. And then I think above, second level was mainly some remodel stuff.
So the way it was explained, instead of coming through the living quarters, going down the stairs or the pole, you're just going to go straight out down the stairs. So there's still going to be stairs and possible, I don't want to say injuries, but situations
Yeah.
either way. There's stairs involved.
Correct. And so the question really becomes, now that you see a number at $1 million, is the improvements short of the ADA bathroom situation, and again, the ADA bathroom situation
separate
is probably an
situation to me.
existing non-conforming
Right.
and probably acceptable in this capacity, because we won't probably be doing enough work to probably trigger a mandatory. That could happen, but it probably wouldn't if we're just fixing the roof and HVAC. Those are probably not gonna meet the requirements. Does that efficiency equates to $1 million worth of value? Now, if you're in the village of Oak Creek and you get a, X amount of seconds faster response and it makes a difference in your life, and we save you because of that, then I guess that $1 million is probably worth it. Not to minimize any of it, but from a staff's perspective, that's a large number. And in the priority, it's probably the lower of the priorities based upon the cost and what it nets us, in my opinion. So, not to say that if we're doing the work, it can't or shouldn't be done. I'm just saying that one's got a little bit less versus the $1 million, $930,000 to remodel the administrative. We work in this building every day. There's a lot of things happening in there that would over a long haul, absolutely amateurize out and provide value. I question the cost of this one as a higher priority, a higher priority that meets.
And
Thank
the-
you, Chief. I agree.
And the HVAC is, in the living quarters is fine. The swamp cooling is for the bays,
For the
is
bays,
that correct?
correct.
All right.
So, Dave, why are you opposed to this?
For exactly what Chris just said, I don't see it, for $1 million, I don't see bang for the buck here. We're gonna save 15, we're still got the stairs, this quote-unquote safety issues. So we're gonna maybe get the boys to the trucks 15 seconds, 20 seconds faster. I don't see that makes or breaks enough to spend $1 million on it, and it doesn't. I just don't. Personally, that's just my philosophy. It's just not
And if they want
bang
to
for
put a
the buck.
stairway in, that's another pay as you go. They can
Could be.
Yeah.
Come over to the microphone.
Yep, we won't hear you.
some clarification. So with the living room, or the living quarters remodel, was there any talk, or is this the station where we talked about, adding additional space for decompression, for turnouts, to kind of separate that from living quarters, or does it have any effect at all on sleep deprivation or anything like that, as far as air quality goes, or?
No, I
you know
don't,
what
I
mean?
don't
Doesn't
believe so.
interrupt that at all?
And
on
did,
Station
and
3.
did that include fixing the porch that's leaking, that's having some of the problems?
That probably does have some of that number. And again, if we don't go this route and we say, hey, listen, we need to, do the apron, do the roof, and we're gonna fix the balcony, we don't have a number broken out for
Right.
every single thing,
Gotcha.
on this option, but is that gonna be $1 million fix? I don't think so. They talked about putting an enclosure in to keep the rain from coming in, which might be a very inexpensive way to fix that, if I recall what they said. And it closes in the porch, but it creates that, and it's an easy fix and doesn't
Yeah.
change the aesthetics of what we're trying to do. So those would be more of a game time decision and a pay-go, hey, this is a, $60,000
They
project.
still need it, but not for the bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the objection is to fire poles, as opposed to stairs. In the few short years that I worked in the fire service, with many fire stations with fire poles, I don't recall any injuries.
So, good question, and the Station 4 project actually does incorporate a fire pole in its response. I recently read something actually that talked about some of the statistics that were reported in injuries related to fire poles, and it was actually, again, I'm not saying that I've researched the study to confirm this, but it seemed to be indicating that the initial reports actually falsely were attributed to the fire pole and the injuries that are associated with it. So fire poles are still an applicable thing. They went to slides for a while in some fire stations. I don't know that that's taken a real big success interest by firefighters to be going down slides. So fire poles aren't necessarily opposed. We don't currently use ours as a general rule, and that kind of predates my existence, and we really haven't revisited that need at this point, but fire poles certainly an option. You still got to get out into the bays, because that in the apparatus or the living quarters, you'd be down in the lower level if you were to do a fire pole over the lower level.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back. Line 17, who wants to do this project?
Well,
Hands.
I do.
and I guess I think all these projects have merit, but they may not, from my mind, they may not have merit to be bonded.
Correct.
So that's where I'm breaking these things out.
Okay.
And if improvements can be made to the living quarters through the ongoing annual capital budget, that's a different issue.
Correct. Well, once again, on every one of these that we're going to talk about right this second, we're only talking about, do you feel like we should
Right.
do the project? Let's not think about, should I bond it? Let's not think about, should I pay-go it?
Sorry.
Just,
sorry.
do you think it should be done, or do you think it shouldn't be done, for whatever reason?
Okay, thanks for clarifying that again, because it was confusing for me too.
Okay, so who wants to do line 17?
It needs to be done. How we do it is a different question.
4 and 2.
You know, Dave, the way you just went over it again, does it need to be done? I guess there's arguments for that. So to put this as an overall umbrella to your question, do I feel it needs to be done? If the firefighters are waking up, and I think there's merit to thinking about whether it needs to be done. Do I want it to be done? Is a different question. So does it need to be done? I
Well,
can
okay,
see some
then maybe
issues.
that's the right way to ask. Maybe I need to rephrase the question. Do we want to recommend to the board that project get done? So, not,
I don't think that's within. Yeah, I in that aspect, that's not what I'm here. That's up to the board to do as a pay to go within the budget.
well,
Does it need to be
everything
done?
we're
But
going
that's
to
up
do is
them in
going to
the
be a
future, so
recommendation
yes.
to the board,
So
but,
I'll stay with mine now.
okay. All right, let's move down then here. So the line 20, 21, and 22 we can ignore because we've pretty much those numbers are included up here and that we've voted for.
Except, Dave, we did talk about if someone really had there was some discussion about the apron and drainage, and I thought some folks, maybe you guys are good with it, but if you wanted to deduct that and well,
It's already included in the Station 3, the
Right.
two of the Station
but
3.
if there was a bond versus pay-go, if someone felt they wanted to.
pull that out.
Well,
So
and
wanted to
we
pay
might pull that
Okay,
out
we
when
need
we
to
get
get
to voting for
Okay.
a bond.
Yeah, we're not
I get that.
So, based on Chief Pachura's presentation to us in the last couple of weeks, he proposed that 1.92, this is line 23, would be bond funded, and the balance of all the apparatus and vehicles over 10 years was 5.78 for a total of 7.7, if you will. So that's how I broke this out, is because obviously right now, based on what was proposed, we've got 1.9 that would be bond funded, although we wouldn't have to recommend that it was. We could say the whole thing gets pay-go'd if that's what we recommended.
And if I remember correctly, the 1.92 included the fire apparatus and the big water trucks?
tenders. Yeah, there's 2 fire engines and 3 water tenders in
Okay.
there.
Correct.
And the rest of the vehicles were smaller vehicles?
No, they were some of them were big engines, and ambulances and chief command trucks and Suburbans and what have you. It's replacements of all of our operational vehicles, I believe, over 10 years, or the ones that are on that capital improvement plan that Chief Pachura.
Which, when we were talking about it, line number 24 was kind of a mixture.
That's
That's
correct.
what I remember. So yes, I agree we need these things, but I don't think we can answer line 24. Do we bond yes or bond no? Because
We're not asking that right now.
I know.
Trying to keep you on track here. Okay, so line 23, yes? Who thinks we need? And I apologize, maybe I shouldn't have put bond funded, but because really line 23 and 24 is one question. Do we need to implement and fund the capital improvement plan as it relates to apparatus and vehicles?
Yes.
Lonnie?
Implement.
Implement
Implement a plan to replace.
the apparatus and vehicles as it was presented to us by Chief Pachura.
Which
And if
I'm-
you guys want to,
I'm looking at this presentation. Is this where you got your numbers from, or is this?
no, well, we got our
revised?
numbers. I got the numbers from.
The 10-year capital improvement plan.
Correct. It's this thing right here. Okay, so it's this thing right here and this here. Okay, so this is, and I don't know if it's on the computer, but this big spreadsheet that Chief Pachura gave us is all of the vehicles and apparatus that are going to be replaced over 10 years. A week or two ago, he gave us this category scoring thing where he recommended that 1.9 would be bond funded out of that. So if you add the 1.9 and what's on this spreadsheet, it totals out to 7.7 over 10 years.
I believe that includes the equipment as well. Is that correct?
No, you mean the telecom?
Not telecom, but there's SCBA.
Yes, there's some
SCBA,
SCBA's and some of that other stuff in there too, I
radios,
believe.
mobile radios, or portable radios rather.
And the SCBA's are ready to be replaced at this time. They're aged out.
They're a few
to-
years out still, but
Okay.
they're within the 10-year number we're looking at, and it's about a $775,000 purchase.
I don't believe it is the radios. I think radios are under telecom.
Okay, radios went into telecom?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense, so they went into there.
Right. So the package, again, we're talking about a $7.7 million package over 10 years.
And-
Is that
Committee, if I can just reiterate again, back to that number 2 item on the, being responsible and being efficient in the spending of funds. This is on a piece of paper trying to gauge where the apparatus should be replaced and how it should go. If it makes sense that this apparatus is functioning very well and there's still a very nice lifespan left in it, then we would be pushing that beyond what we have on paper.
And that's our expectation in what we read in that item number 2 that you wrote, so.
So knowing what 8 years from now, what apparatus will be functioning effectively and need to be replaced, we only are using it as placeholders and in a scheduled basis. But it may come to a point that hey, this other truck that we didn't even have, that the 12-year truck really is broken down and was a lemon, as we talked about, needs to be replaced. Another one can go on. There'll be some
Of course, and if we get lucky enough, or fortunate enough, I should say, that the maintenance is so well done, and that the
new
trucks in the new facility and the trucks are running well, that there could be a pay-as-you-go or a cash offer in 12 years because we'll have saved all that money in our capital improvement plan.
Correct. The apparatus really provides a way better opportunity for us to find those efficiencies than the buildings. The buildings are kind of you're in or you're out. This stuff is, if we're buying a couple very nice apparatus, one that's being delivered as we speak. My hopes are that it's a bit higher quality. It's going to last a bit longer. But if our call volume increases at 15% a year over the next, then the wear and tear that I can't really predict is going to occur. And if our call volume went down, it's going to, you just got to trust that there's a rhyme and a reason, and we're trying to be as close to as we can, but we're not perfect, and it's a crystal ball moment for us. So,
It's another vote for the maintenance facility.
yep.
Well,
So-
I guess from my perspective, I have to trust the professional judgment and expertise of the fire chief and the assistant fire chief to tell me what they're going to need to operate in the future. That doesn't mean I necessarily support it all being bonded, but I think I would agree with this because I don't have the expertise to tell them, well, you really don't need that
Right.
particular vehicle that year.
Okay, back to the question then. Apparatus and vehicles, which is total 7.7 approximately based on these numbers. Everybody think that's appropriate over 10 years?
Yes.
As a need,
Has a need,
As a
correct. We
need.
need to do this.
yes.
We're not talking about a bond, Lonnie.
As a need, do they need to be replaced? Yes. Any citizen in this town, I would hope, would understand that. They replace their cars every so many years
Okay,
themselves.
same question now the chief added a deduct here for the telecom, and just to explain that, Chief Pachura also gave me, and it's in our current draft of our recommendation, $3,017,000 worth of telecom over 10 years. But he also said that based on that sheet, the priority sheet that he gave us, that he was proposing 2.975 to be bonded at the time. That doesn't mean that's what we're going to recommend. It just means which left a balance of 42,000. Now in that telecom, in that 3.17 number, there is a $1.2 million number for a tower, and we just put this deduct, we basically split it and said, if the committee or if the board so chose to say, as many benefits as there is to owning the tower, and that's certainly the most conservative to plan to replace the tower and have us own it and control it. If it's just too big a penny, then maybe we find a partner and then we budget half of that 1.2. So we can, again, choose to do that later, not now, later, if we want. I guess we could do it now, too. We could go ahead and get a feel for how everybody feels about finding a partner for that tower.
I think it's just easier to understand and agree or disagree that telecom, the expenses of telecom, the $3.17 million is needed, 3.017.
Correct.
Is needed or not, and then we can talk about the deduct option. I think it's a separate animal.
I agree. Everybody like telecom?
I like that. And our community who's listening needs to understand that this has nothing to do with dispatching. This has to do with communications for our ambulances and fire trucks in our,
In-house too.
everything, so that we can talk to each other and go save lives and homes.
Everybody like telecom? Mr. Lilly?
Is it a need? Yes.
Boy, you're hard. Oops, sorry. Oh, wait a minute, that's right. Okay, so we're here. So now, let's go back up. And what's gonna happen is I'm gonna, over here, I'm gonna either gonna put a 1, meaning we want it to be bond funded, or a 2, meaning we want it to be pay-go, or I'm gonna leave it blank, meaning we don't wanna do it at all. So on column A, we're gonna come back here. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Dave Soto, and I am a resident, tax-paying member of the community, and have thoroughly enjoyed all of this stuff going on. It's been highly educational. I wish there were more public here in attendance. But as I see your document as designed, it's virtually a yes to every one of those items. How you pay for it is a separate item, and I think you tried to
And we're gonna
explain
do that right now.
Right, but when I see item number 17 as 4 and 2 vote, it should be, in my opinion, they all should be a yes vote, and how you decide would be another column over, is what I'm saying. Where it says bond under column F, column G should be the pay go, column H should be don't do. That's what is a little bit confusing here. When I listen to, I believe your name, sir, is Lonnie? Lon? Your concern is, you know, how we pay it. The fact is, it should be discussed, and that's where a little bit of the confusion is coming up here.
Okay, so, well, so you think G should be a don't do? There should be a column there?
Well-
Because frankly, I am in the don't do on line 17.
Okay, and that's where you would cast your vote. But
That's where I would
the fact
cast
is
my
that
vote,
it should
correct.
still be considered under column D as a yes vote. So that's
No,
how you break it down.
absolutely, and we'll do that. The same, I presume that the same 4 that vote for line 17 are going to vote either bond or pay go. And we're gonna do that right now.
Correct.
And it's going to
But it's not that it's a no vote at this point, unless they physically just do not want it as any consideration whatsoever.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's what it's interpreted. So
It's not going to show as a don't do it if the majority of the committee wants to do it one way or the other.
So just as a member of the public, I'm sure there may be others out there of the same opinion, or they may be saying, yeah, that guy's way out of the ballpark, but that was just my concern. Thank you.
And
Okay.
I think you'll see, Mr. Soto, when we do the 1, 2, or blank, and then there's a number we haven't seen yet that'll show what the bond number is and what the pay-go number is. And then we still have the opportunity to go, okay, wow, that's more than I thought, or whatever. Priority-wise, even though I think we need to do it, maybe remember I said a bond that doesn't pass doesn't matter what the number is. So we need to make sure that we're creating a viable option for the public to determine whether or not it is in their best interest to want it to do. And that's the beauty of the bond.
That is correct. And just a reminder, those lines 11 through 17, anything that we invert, and we have chosen to do all of them, or chosen at least right now to say they are in need, they're going to have that 15% above what's shown has a soft owner cost, I believe it's called.
Correct. And Mr. and a great input, and I guess what Mr. Waters just said kind of was where I was going, a nice and a need. And that's my opinion on 17. Is it a want or a need? And 17, to me, is more on the want side. So that's kind of where I'm leaning towards that, why I'm leaning towards
At least
that
at
no
that
side.
$1 million price
Right,
tag.
especially at that $1 million price tag. That's why I'm going to that no side on that want. The other stuff is more justifiable in that need area.
Understood.
And I
so
think we
this-
just need to go through this exercise and
I
see
do
what
too.
happens.
I'm trying. So, back to Station 4 build, rebuild, line 11. We've all said we want to do it. Is it a bondable or is it a pay-go? Who wants to bond
It's
it?
a one. One.
It's a 1. Okay. So now, just to show you what's happening down below, automatically we've added that 4.945 plus 15%. Oh, poop. Escape, okay.
Yeah, really.
We
That's a
can
technical
still
term.
learn at 60.
Okay.
So, are we then, now you had the bond was a unanimous also, which isn't really represented in your graph right now. Do you want to capture that vote, if you will, that it was a 6-0
Oh,
vote
yes,
to
sir. I'm
bond? Is
sorry.
that
I
is that what that
apologize.
bond- I was just asking what that bond number
So that
over there.
was 6.
Does that make sense, right?
Yes,
We're tracking that?
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Station 5 rebuild. Is that a bond or a pay-go?
Bond.
6. Station 1, well, I'll just ask the question. All of Station 1, is it all a bond or is it, should we break it up and do the west side as a bond and the admin side as a pay-go or vice versa?
I
Let's-
think you need to keep it like you have it on 13 and 14 and vote on it separately.
Okay, let's do it. So Station 1 west side,
Bond.
is that a bond?
Bond.
Mr. Lee, I didn't see your fingers wiggling.
We'll go with a bond with, yeah.
So, committee, don't forget that when we get done, I mean, if we do this exercise here, and if at the end you look at the bond number and you're like, we can have another discussion. This is really the exercise to get to the number and go, wow, that's not the number I expected.
Right.
Maybe we better look at this and I'd like to have a discussion about item number 14 now or whatever.
Okay,
So, not
admin side. And I guess actually let me can we still, as it relates to bond versus pay-go, can we break out admin and maintenance, or do those also have to be together since?
No, so I see this as, again, that hybrid. If for some reason you felt that we shouldn't bond the admin remodel, and I'm not sure why you would feel that way, but if you did feel strongly about that, that tells us then we need to get 9.3 or $930,000 in the
Capital budget.
capital plan, and it just changes the mill rate, the need to capture that in the mill rate at whatever point that we'd be remodeling the station. And remember the efficiencies, if we said, hey, we're gonna do this, and we do the west side and the maintenance facility, but don't do the admin today, or part of that project, and we say, hey, in 3 more years, then we'll remodel that, the costs are gonna be different because you're now, doing a second job with, so a lot of logistics. So there's some synergy in doing the whole thing. But if you believe it should be, let's do a hybrid like we're doing for the apparatus potentially, that's well within your purview. And it may be within our purview because, again, a bond that doesn't pass doesn't do us any good, so.
Okay, back to line 14. Bond or pay-go?
Bond.
Who wants to bond it? Hands.
Pay-go.
I think I'm on the pay-go as well.
So I just want to see hands for bond then right now. 3, okay.
Oh, man. Who gets the deciding vote?
I do, since I'm running the screen.
3 and 3 is.
So I'm going to do, so what was that?
What were you? Were you a yes or a no?
I'm a yes.
Oh, then it's 4.
4.
Okay,
Oh, then I guess you were the deciding
so
vote.
4 and 2. And I'll add that heading. Maintenance facility?
You gotta add the 1 over there.
Oh, sorry. Maintenance facility. Bond. Who wants to bond it?
Bond.
Bond.
Okay. So we are 6. Station 3. Stop. Poop.
Escape.
Escape.
Who wants to bond this one? Mr. Chairman? You want to bond that one? Okay. I guess if I put my glasses on, it'll work. Living quarters. Station 3. Who wants to bond this one? 2. Who wants to pay go it?
Hey, go.
So we're 2-2 there. Frickin' reckon. 2 and 2. And I don't know what to do with that. But for giggles, well, we'll leave it blank for now. So, just to show you where we're at so far. That $14 million for bond funding includes the 15% soft costs. Okay? So that's where we're at so far. We haven't added, I did not add yet, obviously, because I didn't put, we'll come back to line 17, but let's go on down to the apparatus. Line 23. Chief Pachura was more or less recommending that this is what he would recommend get bonded, whereas line 24 would be pay go. Does the committee agree that line 23 should be bonded or pay go?
Bonded.
Hands for bonds. I'm good on that. So we've got 5-1.
So you want to bond, all, the 1.9 million is all of the apparatus for the next 10 years?
No, we're going to, out of these two lines, Lonnie,
So that
it's
1.9 million is,
7.7, and this one, right now, we're saying that one would get bonded, and we haven't actually addressed this. But
so the 1.92 is to get us up to speed on apparatus currently. So the two or three apparatus that we currently are in the need of.
No, that's the 10, over the 10-year time frame we're looking at, is the replacement of Station 6's engine and Station 4's engine, if I'm not mistaken. And then 3 water tenders. That also then one of those that gets
Okay,
replaced
so that's this. Okay, I'm sorry, that's this one. So Station 4, Station 6, and the 3 tenders.
and then that would also afford us a reserve apparatus that would allow us the opportunity for the reserve apparatus to be put in play as well, which we do not have currently. It
And-
would afford us the opportunity.
Okay.
Lonnie
Okay.
and Chief, and I think we even addressed it in our recommendation letter here. The 1.9 is based on 2 engines and 3 water tenders today,
Correct.
but it could be that, a few years down the road, since this is an entire 10-year replacement schedule, that Chief Pachura or the needs may change, and they may say, let's do 3 engines and only 2 water tenders. So I don't know that you should base your vote on exactly which vehicle is getting bought. I think the way I'm looking at it personally is that over 10 years, we've got $7.7 million worth of vehicles and apparatus. And what amount, if any, do we think of that 7.7 should be bonded? Chief Pachura is recommending that 1.9 of that 7.7. I don't care what vehicle is in that 1.9 personally.
Correct. It's really the option of doing this hybrid piece, that some of the apparatus gets bonded and the other apparatus, that's $7 million, is inclusive of Suburbans and whatever. And again, we wouldn't be bonding, back to Dave's point, which one gets funded. We would not be funding a Suburban in that 1.9
Correct.
million. But the big apparatus, there's a heavy rescue squad, there's a light duty squad, that, Station 5's engine, suppose that, engine blows up instead and we got to replace an engine 5, engine instead of, one of the water tenders like Dave said or something like that. It just gives us the hybrid opportunity to fund that $7.7 million need.
Okay, thank you to the both for that clarification. And if that's the case, to get us, in Lonnie's terms, up to where we need to be, to 1.9 million, that's fine over 10 years. And then the rest of the vehicles is up. for
Okay,
next-
so line 23, who wants to bond 1.9 for APRA? Okay, so that's that. And we are, over one, sorry. Arrgh. Okay, the balance of the vehicles, the 5.7, so this is the balance of that budget over 10 years. Who wants to bond it? Who wants to pay go it?
And pay go, maybe a lease, maybe pay cash for it, maybe whatever, again, we need to do. But just to be clear, it's not being
I think that
bonded.
falls under micromanaging that I told you I'm not going to do, but.
Just to be clear, though,
yes.
I mean, if someone, out there in the listening audience goes, hey, we end up leasing it, someone comes back and says, on May 7th or
You said no.
8th, you said pay go, that means cash.
Okay, line 25, telecom. Again, back to line 25 and 27 are right now are basically combined. Chief Pachura had given us $3,017,000 worth of telecom equipment over 10 years. Of that $3,017,000, he recommended that we bond 2.975 of that. Does this committee want to bond that much? Do you want to, or something less?
So the line 27 is additional he wants bonded? Or
No, if you add line 27 and 25, it comes up to the $3,017,000. So,
I think if we can't communicate, then what are we doing? So I think we need to bond it so we can get it done.
okay, who wants to bond it?
Well, I have a
Go ahead.
couple minor, go ahead.
No, you, please, I've said it enough for today so far. Trust me, I'm not done, but please, you have the floor.
Well, the concern I have is,
I
like,
gotta
for
see the
instance, the
bottom.
public siren warning system. I know we need one. It's $50,000. Is that something that's really necessary to bond for, or is that something that's, we approve the items like that all the time in the budget, so is that something that could go into the operating budget?
Correct. It certainly can, and I'm texting with Jeff right now, who's actually at a conference, so he's unable to be here. He sends his love. He said, we can pull some of the money out of that, and I'm looking for my sheet. I don't have it handy with me right
Because
here.
it's hard to just say, yeah, we want to approve 2.975 when we don't have the list of what it includes, which is what we're trying to
You
kind
guys,
of.
you guys had that at one point.
Right, I remember.
It's right here.
It's on this.
Page,
Yeah.
Let me see.
It's on that.
On our little,
So that's
our sheet that I took. Right.
So, and this
we go real
VDEC
quick?
portion of telecom tower, $600,000, that's tied in to line 25, really, isn't it? I mean,
That is correct.
so if we
Reduce
agreed
that
not-
600?
if we agreed to deduct that, that would lower the
Right.
number from 29 down to 23,
Right.
2.3.
Here's the number.
It would deduct, yeah.
So here's the number where we got the 2,975. So if you took out the 50, and if you want to say even the microwave systems, pay go that, I mean, we can come up with a number in Dave's spreadsheet, we could alter that number.
Well, we need to take that 300,000 out or the 600 that you've got on that next line.
We may want to. I don't. The question is that what this committee is recommending? And even if we recommend it as the board, the question on that minus 600 is: does this committee, and more specifically, does the board believe it's more important for the tower has to be replaced some point? Is it more important for us to own the tower outright and control who, what, and when is on that tower, or is the money more important, the saving the 600,000 or some portion of that, and therefore finding a partner, the cell companies or partners that maybe we'll pay half of that, and now we all, I don't know who controls it, maybe y'all get a vote and they have a committee meeting just like we're having.
You mean by controlling it, they could ask us to remove our systems off that tower at some
I don't
point?
know
Is
if
that-
it's
I don't know
if
what that
it's even
means.
Steven, maybe, or you could negotiate who gets what, where, when.
We'd probably pay $601,000, so we'd own 51% of it or something. I mean, so to be clear, Bob just said it's really easy and nice if we were to buy the tower, control it and everything at $1.2 million. But the reality may be that $1.2 million, we can find a hybrid to that relationship, and we just picked half. We could pick 700, deduct 500,000, and if we went to them and say, we're gonna pay 700,000, we want control. If you want us to, put a tower, there's a whole art of negotiation that's way outside of my purview and definitely this committee's purview. It's really, to me, I'd be asking the question, we have $3 million worth of capital needs in the telecom realm. Do you think we should capital and bond 3 million of that, or some number less than that? You tell us what that number is. I don't care what you take out of there, but if you say, listen, you need 3 million, why don't we do 2 million and let's pay go the other million? And Chief, you guys figure out what million you pay go on, but there's no way, and that way we're not taking off the exact tower. It's just a matter of that, and you create that. So I think that's probably a better way to ask the question in the hybrid of telecom. So you guys talk amongst yourselves.
And Chairman, thank you, because this area and the apparatus is where my philosophical questions come into play on bonding, or is it a wear and tear item that should be, sharpen the pencils in the budget every year and replace it that way? And this is, and I thank you for that question, and being able to pull some of this out is, might help me with my decisions. So that's my philosophical version of the day so far. And is the station alert system, we have a question, Ms. Maxwell's asking, is the station alert system not working right now?
Correctly, or
Station alert system, again, I'm on the thin ice moment here, so I'll just be transparent. There's a digital versus analog and the changing of the systems and all that stuff. Does it work today? Yes. It needs more parts and pieces to continue to work as technology evolves. And that's what that is the evolving technology. As we upgrade the microwave, or and I could be wrong, so if Bob is gonna send me some telepathic waves saying that's right. That's my understanding of the whole thing, is that we make these upgrades, other things have to happen to become compliant and work in the new system, and that's what that telecom or a station updating alert upgrades is, if I said that right. So I guess it's
Is it
really
like portable radio? I guess I'm hung up on like portable radios, the 50,000 public siren, like the chairman said.
the tower, do we need to own the tower?
Well, is that an issue? Is that an item that should be under a bond? Is it a wear and tear to me? And is it an annual budgetary type item? We give, I don't know.
Well, I guess I think the comment was made that I think it's difficult for the board, the committee members here, to decide what needs to come out and what stays in, because we don't have that knowledge and expertise. What I would say is that because there are some unknowns up there, one being the tower and the other one being the station alerting system, I would suggest that we just lower that number from the 2.975 down to 2.4 or 2.5, and just let the fire department deal with that number and figure out how to get it done.
So if you take the 250 for the microwave system, 250,000 for the microwave system, let's just say, and you take 350,000 for the portables, because again, we can take whatever number you want out of it. Take the whole, just take the tower out if you want to do that. But just for the sake of talking about portable radios, and are that really a bondable item if it's a philosophical issue? And then, of course, the warning system at 50,000, you're at $650,000. Now, the question of the tower, hey, should we, you know, take another 350 off of the tower just as, make it $1 million, and whether we pay-go that, whether we get the other people on the tower to pay for that portion of, or however we need to get to, we have no idea what the future holds. But then that's your $1 million deduct off of there, and do the hybrid and say, hey, do 1.975 and, you know, or do 2 million in bond, and whatever we're funding in there, we fund through it. And the other one, we take care of it. Just remember that the one of the beauties of the bond is that we do these projects which need to be done. If no one's saying, hey, we don't need this stuff, I'll be honest, the public warning system may be that if the cell tower issue gets fixed in the canyon, then we don't necessarily need the warning system anymore, because it's all done through code red alerts and through your cell phone. But because we don't have a good cell signal in the canyon right now, that's the backup. And it's something that's in place, and if we take it away, it's kind of like, man, we had that in place, and if something bad happens, it's just one of those tough things. But if we said, hey, our new system to warn people is the code red system, and we can have a reliable system, then 50,000 may come off, and we don't need to do that anymore. You know, that's just
Because the warning system's working now, I don't think we can ever get away with that. You can't guarantee that everyone's going to have a phone with them.
And Chief, the other thing I just want to bring back to the committee to think about is anything we pay go, and I'm a fan of, but based on the numbers Gabe showed us, you know, we're spreading it out over shorter period of time, over current property owners that are taking that big hit. So the higher we make that pay go thing go, I agree with Lonnie philosophically, you know, telecom should be a pay-go thing, but we're so far behind, and we're eBaying parts right now, that perhaps all or a portion of telecom needs to get done sooner than later, and then they fund their capital budget at the 1 million or the 1.5 or whatever it is, based on the numbers that we finally come to, so that 10 years from now, when virtually all of this telecom is going to be obsolete again, and we're going to have to do all of the telecom because that's got the shortest lifespan, then the capital budget will have the funds in it, so we don't have to bond it anymore. But there's certainly a percentage of this telecom that I believe needs to be bonded up front.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in reality, we're just giving a number again. And just because our recommendations are, yeah, buy these trucks, you should get 4 trucks or 5 trucks or do this or do that, they're going to spend the money in the ways that are appropriate, correct?
Right.
So,
Okay, so the horse is almost dead here. Are we?
Now you're speaking my language.
I'd like to recommend that we fund telecom to the amount that brings the bottom line up to 18 million. That's 1.946 and change. If you scroll down there, the bond fund says 16.054. We need about 1.946 to round that up to 18. Do we want to bond some uneven number? That's what I don't know. Do you want to bond?
I'm sure that we would, whatever number
18.042?
we ultimately come up with, we'll just round it to
the
18 or 19
That's-
or
that's where I'm going with
17.
that. The 18 sounded right 2 meetings ago.
Yep.
It fits right here, in my opinion, right now. So just to plug in then the number of telecom that is somewhere just under 2 million.
Chief, do you got your calculator? What would that?
One-
Well,
one-
wait. I guess we should
get rid of.
talk to the committee here. What does the committee think of her recommendation?
Well, I wanted to see where it ended up, but my number was 18 as well, so it's good to see.
Well, if you want to see what happens, let's
Yeah,
just
let's do it.
play
That's-
here.
But that's pulling the whole point, 2.9 in.
So
but
if
then
you
taking
add
the
the telecom, you're at 19, and if you said you want the balance, well, of course,
Take out
you
that
know.
600 or 650.
and if
Yeah, let's
we
see that 18.
if you take on, even if you take out the 600, you're back at 18.
But we had some questions about some specific items on that separate telecom list. by bringing that down to 18, that,
Well, that's
Chances are.
true, but I think what would end up happening is if you made this, say, 1.9, then this would be 1.042. Because the
Yep.
equipment, other
Yes.
than the, than the 600 maybe,
I
everything
agree.
is still needed. It's just whether you're pay-going it or bonding it.
well, but
To-
ultimately, if we recommend, I'm gonna make this up, 18, I think it's up to the board, the fire board, to decide what the mix of 18 will end up being using the recommendation, but not necessarily line by line agreeing with the recommendation.
So this is
Agree.
getting us to look at what number are we bonding, that's the whole exercise.
That's the
That's
whole
right.
exercise.
And
my
that's where I'm
number's-
going.
My number was 18, I don't know.
And
what
my
everybody
number's
else was,
18.
So the question is 18.4 the number, 18.429,
No,
or is
18.
18 round.
18
Be-
straight up?
And to your point, you take out the alerting system and the siren, there's your 450 right there, then
Yes.
you're at
Yeah,
your,
we're right there.
you're at your 18 million that we had a question
Taking
on.
it out of the bond, you mean.
So-
Correct.
So
Yes.
line 25 should be 2.5? And leave
No,
it
he
minus-
can't do that because it changes that other number, so.
It'd be 1945775 would be the number.
But without line 26 showing up on that line too.
Correct. It would, yeah, that would remove line
2.55,
26.
whatever.
So get rid of this.
But in our world as the committee, if we come forward and say, okay, we're going to recommend an $18 million bond, to your point, then it's up to the board to what is a truly want and what are the needs at that point.
And we have two of them in the room listening and participating in this discussion.
And
So
what's
I-
philosophical and what's
Well,
not.
and I truly trust these two folks to take it back to the other three members of our board to say there was discussion on telecom, there was discussion on apparatus, and they struggled with Station 1 administrative, or whatever Station 1, issues up above. I truly trust them to take that back and explain where this committee was going with these different
All of our
choices.
heartache or
Yes.
discussion.
Yes.
Correct.
So that, yeah, that's exactly. Get rid of that 65.
Where's the 65 cents?
Where'd that come from?
I got $1, I don't have any change on me right now. Can you adjust that down there? That's their budget, their bonus there.
That's fine.
1071. 225.
So I think
3017, that's those two numbers. 3017.
it's a math thing.
Okay, so
I should have been a mathematician.
there's your pay-go and your bond fund.
Where's the 65 cents come from?
Yeah,
I don't know where it's from.
just happened to have, like,
Maybe, because of the 15%.
Yeah, so I'd recommend that we make it, 14.99999, something, no, anyway, 18. I got 65
And
cents.
Elaine, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 15 is kind of max, which is why I used 15. It could only be 13% for our soft costs, so.
Well,
we-
yeah,
Once again, we don't know exactly.
And the numbers that are in this top section, are also the high range given to us by LEA
Thank
and
you,
Core.
thank you, Mr. Waters. That's exactly where I was going. So those 4 or 5 rebuilds are on the high range.
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, and I'm not, I guess on the.
Microphone, please. Sorry.
On the telecom, I'm not suggesting that we take out any specific projects. I'm just saying that there's some unknowns and we should just set a dollar amount and then go from there.
Correct, which is what we did. So to be honest with you, we did a hybrid model for the apparatus and we were comfortable with that. The nice thing about the hybrid is that literally if you have a fire truck that's not running as well as it should be, we can, whether we're still limping it along or whether it's really broken, done, you have some flexibility and acceptance of risk, if you will. If our telecom stuff doesn't work, we're dead in the water, as you kind of said. We can't communicate with stuff, we're kind of done. But I still think it's appropriate and acceptable to hybrid those, if you will, to a you know, to a hybrid model and cost share that out and just appropriate as such. Again, back to what I said, if 18 million is the number, and you've done a very good exercise today here, led by Mr. Waters and the chairman here, to get to where we are to talk about this stuff. I guess the question is anyone now concerned with that number 18 million? And if you're not, what else can you take out to make that number lower and be acceptable on?
There still is an outstanding question with the Station 3
There is.
living quarters, because we really
There
didn't.
is. We didn't
clarify that.
clarify what we're going to do here. So for those, I guess the best way to address that now, for those that want to do it, how would you do it? Would you pay go it or would you bond it?
Mr. Waters, I was one of the people that voted to bond it, but I think I'm going to change my vote on line 17. I think if we can get the work done efficiently and not use as much of that 15% soft money, there may be an opportunity then to recoup, even with an $18 million bond, to then throw back in some of the living quarters for Station 3 items that need to be done. Maybe not the full 998, but there might be parts and pieces that we can do because we didn't spend that full 15%.
Thank you. That's a very good point where I was headed also on that, is like that 18 million, if we agree with that, that's $18 million bond, and then you start sharpening the pencils, and then you figure out where the monies are. And if it goes to the quarters on Station 3, and that's part of the bond, and the money, and they found savings elsewhere, then it got done. That's okay, I guess. So
Lonnie, she wanted to change her vote from bond to pay-go?
To pay-go, yes.
which I'm the same way, but she's saying the same thing as I'm saying. So it's
But you said
but
no.
that $18 million.
You said you didn't want to do it. So are you saying you do want to do it?
As a
And
pay-go.
as a
as a
pay-go?
pay, well, I'm saying it's way down low on my priority list, and so it's a want right now. Not in my version, it's a want, not a
Okay,
need.
let's hear from an expert here.
So with Station 3, sounds like it's not the top priority, right? Necessarily for the majority of the group. The good thing about hiring a CMAR early and going through the CMAR process, which I know we discussed when we presented only a couple days ago, I feel like, is that if we know that Station 3 remodel, and we have a good idea of what it entails and how much it will cost, is still a priority, and we have that in mind through pre-construction, really, and design of the other stations, whether you decide, or the other projects, whether you decide to bundle them all or not, and knowing that ahead of time can really adjust whether everything is at the high end for another project or not, because does that make sense? So it is controllable. Instead of just, once we're done with everything, whatever's left over, if we have enough. If you'd like to view it as, hey, we'd really like to do Station 3 remodel, can we keep this dollar figure in mind and kind of have a checks and balances? So every decision that we make on whether something's high end or whatever you consider to be, every option, that can always still be kind of a separate column that we have in our mind, so kind of on the forefront. So does that make sense? Because it kind of all seems like
Yes.
maybe grouped into one versus.
So in
whatever's left
that
over.
list up there, as we look at it, we know that 4 and 5, again, we're not necessarily assigning priority unless you choose to do that, but we know that 4 and 5 have a very high priority, both in Station 4's needs and the 5 with the work that's going on with state parks right now. So those are going to be the two projects that are going to hit the tarmac first and create the need first. We have that budgeted at what is that there, $7.5 million plus the 15% on that, so another $1 million on that for the 15%.
No, it's included in the
Bottom number.
in the bottom
In the bottom
number.
number.
Oh, okay.
So when you
And
do that,
this
if we do
number
those two
here.
projects and end up with a, $6.5 million, out the door price, because things just line up better, and I don't want to lead anyone to believe that's what is going to happen, but if it does, I mean, it always seems to cost more than you expect, but
Right.
we've built in a lot of conservative estimates and everything that we know about, and then we go, wow, there was a savings there. That's the efficiency piece that your report talks to. That doesn't mean that, well, then, hey, let's build a much bigger Station 1 project. I mean, again, the board will make those decisions. This committee won't. I mean, the board will decide, yeah, you're right, we do need to do this or that. But we then do the Station 1 project. We've bought a couple vehicles along the way. They come in better than we thought, whatever it is. That's where Station 3 now at the lower priority, the whole Station 3 is a lower priority with the exception of the roof showing some real significant needs. And I don't know that today it shows an absolute significant need, like I'm worried it's gonna fall in. It's just that we better start looking at it, keep an eye on it, and make sure that it doesn't degrade any further to create a higher priority. Now we get to Station 3 project, or maybe the HVAC, a couple of these swamp coolers go out and it becomes a high priority. Now we're gonna maybe have to flip things around. That's the unknown stuff. And we evaluate where we're at in the project, what the needs are, and we may say, you know what, we haven't got to Station 1 yet, but AVs have been really good. Let's do this. Let's do Station 3. Let's do the whole project. The board decides that. And we end up, pay-going the remodel of the admin side, the same $900,000 roughly. That's the beauty of, the 10-year window that this goes out, and we make this happen. So we're not locking ourselves in anything. You're creating an opportunity for the community to fund the emergency services, both in the fire stations, to become sustainable and efficient and not in a state of disrepair where we're in emergency mode. So we're being proactive and taking care of some capital telecom and fleet and equipment needs that we need to do
Because
to help.
let's face it, we need to do it all anyway.
Needs to
So
be done.
it's just how are we gonna pay for it? And that's really
Correct.
why we're here today.
And so with that, if you're done with that spreadsheet, I'm gonna go back to a different one then.
Yes, sir. Can you save it?
Yeah,
I did
we'll
not
save it.
save
Yep.
Did we finish
Well, no, we haven't, Chief, we haven't.
that last line?
Can we go back?
We can go back, sir.
Because we haven't finished that discussion. On line 17. Is that a 1, a 2, or do we leave it blank? My personal feeling is it stays blank, but
Which leaves it open for interpretation, whatever's.
well, it would leave it in that we wouldn't do it, and we're not including that $1 million isn't going either into the bond or the pay-go.
And you could
If you
create a-
feel like it needs, if the majority of the committee, that's why we're here voting, if we feel like that it needs to be in one or the other, then we need to put a 1 or a 2 next to it.
Well, I voted for having it done, but I don't believe it should be immediately included in the bond. If there's efficiencies found and that's the way it makes more financial sense for me as a taxpayer, then that's what I wanted to do at that time. I don't know how to answer that.
So it's like a number 3. We
Yeah,
can make it 3,
I
but
didn't put a 3. I didn't. Sorry.
How would you make that work? Would you recommend that we put it as a pay-go?
I would say do it as a pay-go with an asterisk, if you will, a 2 with an asterisk, and then in your report just said that if the committee agrees, not putting words in your mouth, but that Station 3 living quarters is a maybe wait-and-see project that needs, further investigation. It may go through a pay-go, or could be realized by funds through the bond if funding is available, if that makes sense.
That's what I.
I mean, and you can do that, so it'd be a 2 in your report, on this model here, and then in your report, it would probably reflect what we just said.
Okay, who agrees with the verbiage that Chief just threw out at us?
I do.
Hands?
That makes sense.
So you're a yes too? Okay.
I'm a yes on what the chief was saying, correct.
Okay.
That
So that's a pay-go.
With a star.
And that
with an
is
asterisk, yes, with a big
2.
asterisk.
Okay.
But if he puts that star there, it may start a mathematical equation, so you better not do that.
In the cell.
And that means you're a no, Dave?
I don't think we need to do it.
And to be clear.
So there you go. Now we're at 8 million in pay-go and 18 on bond, with a total 10-year expenditure of $26 million.
Yep, that's what I.
In an estimated, that's our estimation of what we're predicting these things to cost. So again, so we're clear, this is just an estimation for what we can do, what we know today.
Not to beat this
Thanks, Dave.
that horse, but on 3, the way you explained it or presented, is that the living quarters, in your opinion, Chief, a want or a need at this point? And I say now, even 4 or 5 years from now.
Well, let me,
Touring the station, they get to the bays, and it's a stair here, like Steve said. So this is where I'm conflicted on where I'm voting on that one, and to go with Mr. Waters, is it a want or a need?
so what I would say, so this is Chris Kazian, Fire Chief speaking. Is it a need? I would say that it would be more of a want to become efficient than an absolutely have to do, just on face value. What I haven't really done my work on to go, absolutely, that's worth 900 and whatever $1,000 that was, and it's an absolute.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. So again, back to the recommendation here is like, hey, this is what's in front of us. This is what was presented. This is what the group looked at. That does not mean at the point that we go, hey, let's do this, that the board that will be sitting at this table will approve that, because I would expect at that point that they would be wanting to hold us accountable to the validation of why it's needed, and that will happen at the time that we're making that recommendation. So
If ever, like Ms. Maxwell just said. So, okay, yeah,
that help you?
because
So this isn't a carte blanche moment that, hey, the committee said it, but if you remember back to the 2007 committee, they said we should have an airport station and a lower loop station and a this station and there were a Station 8 station, and none of those things came to fruition, even though they were on the list and they were recommended by the committee. Things happened and they'd end up getting, sidelined at the time. So this may all get sidelined if something changes.
okay, so to clarify on public record, that I do not believe that 3 stations on the living quarters need to be done at this time. But in the future, that's why I voted. Was in the future, 5, 10, 15 years from now, if all of a sudden there is a true need, that is where I'm voting on this pay-go at that time. But now I don't think it needs to be done, same as Mr. Waters. I just don't see a need of it at this time.
I completely
So-
understand that, and I appreciate you putting that on the record, and you got that word for word, so we can highlight that at the 2027 committee meetings, which you will be on, Lonnie. You'll be on, trust me.
Lonnie said.
So with that, I just wanted to go back now. So since you're talking about an $18 million bond, I just want to make sure that we're looking at this page now, as now it would be more relative to what it would look like in that realm. Come on. So, I don't know what's going on with my computer. It won't let me slide it over one notch. But anyway, here's the, oh, that's 18. Yeah, I know, I see that. I don't know, my computer's having seizures. Okay. So this number here really is what we're looking at. And what was the number? 8 million? So we look at that $8 million. $8 million. So we're now putting in capital. This year's already what we're in. So we don't, can't really count this year because this is what we have to pay go in this year because the bond doesn't exist. If it gets approved in November, then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plus 50,000. So you got 9. You got 1.35 or 9 times 10. No crap. 9,450,000. Right? Thank you. My math is sometimes challenged. So if you're talking about an $8 million number that was talked about pay-go, this is that buffer, so as we're going into future years, that capital fund has money in it, and that will continue to occur to be able to then fund other capital items that are occurring. Keep in mind that if we do this work, we've got 6 that's, a couple years old right now. In this next 20 years, we've taken care of a lot of the issues. So we can probably start to save in a responsible way as a board, start plugging money in to save for station number 3, let's say, or station number 6, or whatever station will be that down the road that will need address, further need in 2050. Well, we're not going to be here then, but that's the responsible part, which one of Dave's points talks to about the future boards being responsible in creating a capital improvement plan that gets funded so we don't find ourselves having to do another bond in 2040. Does that make sense? As to how that gets plugged in and why we went from 2.5 million with no bond to 1,050,000 in this scenario. And that's as we know it today, right? If something else comes up on the radar for year 12 or 13 that we can't predict, it'll change that model. If things, construction prices plummet, I mean, it can happen, right? It did, right? Prices went down in 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 a bit.
And it'd be nice for you to flip back and forth between your comparisons, your bond tax comparison, to show with that 18 million, this next year, the difference is, it's less to go bond in the first year, and then,
It's less to go on every
Ev-
year for the 10 years.
yeah,
You're saying looking at the mill rate itself.
yeah.
Correct. The mill rate itself goes to 253. The bond rate is projected to be at 26. This is an estimation, but 2063. So remember these numbers, I believe, are based upon 3 bond sales as well. Because if we borrow $18 million today, it's going to cost one number. If we borrow $6 million 1 year, $6 million 5 years later, and $6 million 3 years after that, there's a different payment schedule. The interest rates could be different, things like that. So this is an estimation, I believe, to mirror what Stifel.
Stifle.
I was spinning. Which one am I going to pick?
E?
I'm consistently wrong, which is good.
No, you did right. It was Steve.
So that's what this is. And there was a question that Gary Johnson had was, are we talking about a 20 or 25-year bond? And in Stifel's illustration, they show a 25-year period of time. So the first bond sale was paid off like in 20 years. The second one was paid off like in, overlapping like 17 or 18 years, as I wrote down the numbers on my sheet I put away already. And then the last bond sale was paid off as so many years, and that entire 3 bond sales is borrowed and paid back in a total of 25 years. This one at 20, this one at 14, this one at 16, or whatever those numbers are. So different bonds are being paid at different, and that's what creates that level debt service payment and things like that. So just for your report, there was a question.
Are you done with?
If there's any questions, I just want to show the $18 million bond and how it would relate into there. And does that, Karen, do you want me to show some other comparison at all, or is that good? Does that get you to who we are? It shows, what's interesting to me is it's showing, I'm not all the way there, that's why. So it's showing a mill rate at the end of the 10 years at 314.7. Is that responsible? Is it making things do? We still have lots of work to do in all the other areas that we can control, health care and things like that we've been doing a really good job on, our workers' comp, things like that. So we have ways that hopefully through safety and things we can create efficiencies there. We have salaries that we can work at and look at. Again, we want to remain competitive, but we have to be market appropriate as well and things like that. So all those things are kind of all in there that are what they are. And you notice too, we've been borrowing money. We talked about this at a board meeting. That's all coming down and going to zero. So there's some other things happening internally to the budget that are trying to best practice in the middle of all this as well. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering if don't have any more questions on the spreadsheets or on either one of the spreadsheets. Maybe now it's time to go through the draft report. If there's anything glaring that is incorrect, wrong, or needs to be adjusted on both the recommendations and the findings of fact,
Can we take a bathroom break?
that's up to him.
Yeah, I think that would be very appropriate. And then when we get back, I do want to go through Gary's comments too. It relates to the report.